So welcome to Introduction to Mailchimp. This is the first webinar out of 4 in our Mailchimp series. Before we get started, just to sort of, the vocabulary is not with me either. Just before we get started, if you're new to Zoom, things to be aware of as you're using the chat window, that's going to be the main way for you to interact with us today. We can't see or hear you, but if you have any questions or comments, if you place that into the chat, we will see those and answer those as we're going along. You do not need to wait till the end. We'll take questions as we're moving through the webinar. So whenever they come up, go ahead and put them in there. You do have some privacy settings on your chat. So if you look, there's a little drop-down menu, and you can decide whether or not you want that to be to just the panelists, which is myself and Michelle Foster, or if you want everybody to see it. So do be aware of that setting as you're using the chat window. If you're in full screen mode, my video might be floating on your screen. What that means is I'm just like a little square off to the side. If you find that that gets in your way, you can click and drag it around your screen with your mouse. Just click on it once and drag it around. You can also hit the minus sign, and that will minimize my video so that you're no longer seeing me. If that's your preference, that's fine. We are recording this session, so you will receive an email afterwards with a link to the recording, a link to the FAQs, and then also a link to a survey, which we'll also share with you at the end of today. If you just take a few minutes to fill that out, we really appreciate your feedback and try to use that to continue to make these better. So today during our session, we're going to cover several topics. We're going to talk about signing up for your Mailchimp account, how to create your audience, how to import contacts into those audiences. Then we're going to talk about something called tags, how to use tags, why you'd use them. We're going to cover publicity settings in the archive bar. Then we're also going to authenticate your account. So we have a lot of ground to cover today. And for that reason, I am going to be going a little bit fast. If you find that I'm going too fast to follow along, remember again that we are recording today's session, so you'll have the video so you can go back and pause and rewind and all those things as much as you need to. Also keep in mind that you are able to get help for today's webinars. So if you find that you get stuck and the helps that we provide aren't adequate, you can reach out via email, and I'll be happy to help you one-on-one. My name is Jen Woodrum. I'm a PD coach. I've been a PD coach for about 5 years now. I've been with Wycliffe for about 7 years. I've been teaching webinars for about 4 years now. And then we also have Michelle Foster joining us, who's another one of our PD coaches, and she helps me with quite a few of these as well. So getting started, we're gonna, let me stop my share because I try to switch shares. Sometimes it doesn't do what I want it to do. So we're gonna switch over. Let me know at any time if you're not seeing the screen that I'm talking about. I'll try to be clear about that, but let me know if you have any problems seeing. So this is hopefully where you came to register for today's webinar. I just wanted to show this website real quick because there's a lot of resources here, and we will make sure that you see them. So for each webinar, you'll notice this Read More link. If you click on those links, it's going to take you to more resources that have to go with that webinar. So if you haven't already figured that out, you might want to check it out. Before I go into this, one of the questions that we get is, why do we in Wycliffe encourage people to use Mailchimp instead of the traditional PDF attachment? And so there's several reasons for that. One of those reasons is that 60 to 70% of contacts have been shown to only check their emails on their mobile device, typically on their phones, sometimes on tablets, but all these screens are different sizes. And one of the nice things about Mailchimp is that it automatically resizes the content to fit whatever screen it's being looked at on. So it's called a responsive interface. And so with a PDF, if somebody were to open up a PDF on their cell phone, they're going to have to zoom in and zoom out of that PDF in order to be able to read your content, to see your pictures. And a lot of people won't take the time to do all of that in order to read what's going on. With Mailchimp, they automatically resize your fonts and images so that no zooming is necessary. They can just scroll up and down, and it'll be an appropriate size for people to be able to read it. Another thing is that some people are unwilling to open PDFs on mobile devices because they're concerned about viruses. That's true of regular email clients as well. as many people won't take that extra step for security purposes. So that's another reason that Mailchimp is, we're kind of pushing people to move towards Mailchimp, just because of those different factors that are going on. Now, with that said, you still want to include a PDF. One of the downsides of Mailchimp, I think that a lot of people don't like, is that Mailchimp does not automatically create a PDF for you. It doesn't automatically create a printable version. So you do need to have two templates when you move to Mailchimp. You have your Mailchimp template, and then you also need to have your paper template. So whether that's in Publisher or Word or comparable application, you do need to have both so that you can easily copy and paste your content from one template to the other. The reason that we still ask you to attach that PDF is because we have had churches reach out to us in frustration saying, why are our missionaries no longer attaching PDFs? We want to be able to print them out. So if you are sending your newsletters to people who want to print out a copy of it, you are going to have to make both of those yourself. Okay? So Mailchimp does not automatically do that for you. We have created some templates for you, so people always want to see what it's going to look like or what we're working towards. So I'm going to show you some examples. But if you go to this webpage, again, the resource webpage, you'll notice that there's samples and then there's templates. If you click on the templates, these are going to automatically open into your Mailchimp account once you have your account set up. Okay, so if you don't want to go through all the steps of creating your own, which is what we're going to cover next week, then this is where you can upload ones that have already been pre-created for you. Now, even if you do use one of these templates, we still encourage you to come next week because we're going to show you a lot more than just creating templates. We'll show you how to interact with adding images and all the different things that go into making a newsletter. So you'll still want to be there even if you decide to use one of these. Again, we just wanted to show you an example. So this is what one of our coaches created. You'll see she put her banner in here, and then there's her text and images. Okay, so this is just one of the ways that it can look like. And you can do quite a bit with these, so it doesn't have to look exactly like that, which is why we have a couple of different templates to show you what some of the different members have done. This one's quite long, so you probably won't want to make your newsletter this long. But again, we just wanted to show you some of the different options that are out there. Okay. So those are just some of the things that are there for you to start out with and what we're kind of moving towards. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move over to Mailchimp. You just want to go to Mailchimp.com. Okay. And you'll see in this top upper right-hand corner, it says sign up for free. And that's the button that you're going to want to start out with. Now, this screen frequently changes. So it doesn't always look like this, but it will always have somewhere on it a sign up for free button. And it'll always have your login button. So once you have created your account for the first time, you would use the login button instead. Okay, so now we're just going to start putting in our contact information for our newsletter. One thing before I get too far into this is we've had several people in the past be concerned about security features with Mailchimp. What I would say to that is I have put lots and lots of security information into the FAQ that you're going to receive later today. If you would please read that first before you ask questions about security, I'd appreciate that. Still ask questions, of course, if you have them after reading it. But the reason that I ask you to do that is because we've had times in these webinars where we've spent 20 minutes talking about security questions, which reduces the amount of time that I can cover everything else. So we try to keep that conversation in the FAQ and then in personal emails. And so just keep that in mind as you go forward. So getting started, you want to use one of your organizational emails. Let me use webinar email. But you do need to use an organizational email. So whether it's Wycliffe, SIL, JARS, etc., you need to use that over Gmail or Yahoo. The reason for that is Mailchimp jumps through lots of hoops to keep their platform secure. And they do that so that your emails don't get counted as spam. Okay, so having an organizational email, we're also going to authenticate that email later on. So it's just one of the things to keep in mind as you start setting up some of the stuff. Username is just whatever you need it to be. Nobody will see your username except for yourself. We do encourage you to write down your sign-in information somewhere so that you're able to find it later. Sorry, I cannot click and talk at the same time. Once you have this in here, okay, one thing to notice is that there is 5 criteria for your password. So you need to have a lowercase character, an uppercase, a number, a special character, and then 8 characters minimum. So special characters are things like the @ sign, the pound sign, an asterisk. A space is considered a special symbol. Any of those, you need to have at least one in your password in order for it to be valid. With a username, you do not want to have any special characters. Okay, so if you accidentally put a space at the end of this, it's not going to let you have that username. Okay, so you see that it says right here, only letters and numbers. So if you do that, or if you can have this @ sign, obviously, if you use your email. But if you're not using your email, make sure to not have @ signs, pound signs, any of that. Once you have all that set, click Get Started. And they're going to send you an email. Okay, so I'm going to hop over to my email. Hopefully they'll send it quickly. Okay, and so go over to your email and you're just verifying that this email does indeed belong to you. So you're going to click on this blue Activate Account. Okay, and it'll take you back over to Mailchimp. You'll see it says, I'm not a robot. So this is one of the features that Mailchimp has changed from time to time. Sometimes it's just a button like this. Sometimes you have to complete an activity, like type in a word or choose all the images that have a street sign in it, things like that. So whatever activity is on this page, complete that. Hopefully it'll just be a button like mine was.
Jen, it didn't show us the email when you were checking your email.
Okay.
So if that's important, I just wanted you to know we didn't see it.
Okay, thank you. It was not very important. I'm not gonna share that with you. You'll just receive an email to your account that says it's a verification email, and it'll have a message that says, "We're glad you're here." It'll have your username, and then it'll have a blue button just underneath it that says Activate Account. So just go ahead and click that button. And there shouldn't be anything that trips you up in that email. Thank you for pointing that out, Michelle. On the next page, we're going to start filling out your account information. So go ahead and put in your first and last name. If you're a married couple, it is okay to put both first names into this first name cell. And once you've done that, click Continue. What's the name of your business? So please hear this. Don't put Wycliffe here. Don't put Jars. Put your name again. The reason that we want you to put your name instead of the organization is it's going to copyright to whatever name you put here. We want it to copyright to you, not to your organization. Similarly, sometimes they've changed this throughout time, but there's been times where they use this name to put it over the address that you give them. We want the address to be yours and not Wycliffe's. Okay, so do put your name here. If you've already filled this out and you need to change it, I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. Okay. So do you have a website? I've never seen the yes, no option. I didn't know that you could say no. It used to be that you had to give them a website. I don't know why they're suddenly giving you the option to not give one, but there's a lot of things that you can put in here. So you could put in Wycliffe's email, you could put in, if you've created a missionary webpage, you could put that in here. You could put your Facebook page, you can put Instagram, you could put your personal missionary page. You can do a lot of things with this. They used to require it. I'm not sure if you say no, if they'll give you any grief for that, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave mine as yes. And click Continue. Add your address. Again, you wanna put your personal address in here, not Wycliffe's. Eventually you'll add Wycliffe's, but that's gonna be in next week's webinar. So right now we're just putting in your personal information. Okay, so once you have your city, state, and everything, go ahead and click Continue. Okay, do you have a list of email subscribers? We're gonna say no for right now. We'll add them in later. You can click yes and see what will happen, but we're just gonna say no for now. Okay, Facebook and Twitter, this is something that we're gonna go over in a later webinar as well. If you're doing this on your own, of course, feel free to do this now if you prefer and don't need help. And click Continue. Let's find your marketing path. I'm not going to try to find my marketing path because this is really looking at people who are doing business. They're doing e-marketing. and we're not using this for e-marketing, so we're going to say not right now. Accounts ready. So this is asking if you want to receive emails called what's in store. For the most part, this is not going to be helpful to people who are listening to this webinar, because again, this is aimed at people who are doing e-commerce. So this is, because we're not doing e-commerce, most of the information that you receive in these emails are not going to be beneficial. But if you're curious or just enjoy that kind of thing, feel free to check the box if you want it, and then click Let's Go. Your list is now your audience. This won't, don't worry about this dialog box. If you've never used Mailchimp before, you won't know what they're talking about. So the next thing that we want to take a look at is we need to create what's called an audience. Creating an audience, it used to be called a list. Okay, so if you used Mailchimp before, what used to be called a list is now called an audience. And what an audience is just a list of your contacts. Okay, so if you're importing from TNT or Donor Manager, you have an Excel sheet of contacts that you need to insert, it's called an audience, and that's all that it is. Now, one thing that we ask you to do, or we encourage you to do, is most people will only have one audience as opposed to many. The reason for that is when the contact is in an audience, when you send them an email, they have the option to change their own contact information. So it could be that they unsubscribe themselves from your email. It could be that they click on the link to update their email address. I've had people change the spelling of their name. There's a variety of things that they can change themselves. However, if you have the same person in more than one audience, okay, what we're about to create in more than one audience, their contact information is only going to be for that list, for whatever list that email was sent to. So if they're in 2 or 3 audiences, you have to go to each audience and manually change the other 2 as well. So really, and we're going to show you how to break your audience down into groups by using something called tags. So if you are targeting a portion of your partnership team, you're going to be able to do that even though they're all in the same audience. The only reason that you would need more than one audience is if you have 2 contact lists that have no crossover. So for example, I've worked with recruiters who they wanted to have one audience for students that they were recruiting and one audience for their own partnership team. Okay, because there's no crossover at all between these 2 lists, now it makes sense to have the 2 separate ones. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. So we're gonna create an audience. You do have to create your audience before you import contacts. So if you're watching the video, you try to import contacts and it didn't work, it's probably because you didn't have an audience created. So we have to do this. So to do that, we're going to use this create button at the top of the screen. Again, if my video is floating, it could be in the way now. One more thing, before I do that, just to the right of that create button, you'll see your name. So you'll see your first name and then the full name. This is where you can go to change your information. So if you put Wycliffe's name instead of your name, where it asks for the organization, you would go to your profile or your account and edit that information from there. Okay, so there's some settings in there, just click edit, and it'll allow you to change your personal information. So coming back to the audience, I'm gonna hit the create button. This is not, so bear with me a little bit. Mailchimp has made lots and lots of changes since the last time I taught this, and so it's throwing me off a little bit. This audience has one contact. Oh, they created an audience for me. That's why I'm confused. Okay, so they actually created an audience for me, and they gave it a name. So they named my audience Jennifer Woodrum. You would probably want to change this name, and the only reason for that is if you are, so they named it after my organization. The reason that you would want to change that is if you're going to use subscribe forms, which we're going to talk about again in a later webinar. If you're using subscribe forms, they're going to see the name of the list that they're signing up for. And just seeing your name might not be something that's meaningful. So if I go into settings and go to audience name and defaults, okay, this is where you can change your audience name. So my personal one is something like Wycliffe Partners. But you could put, Jen Woodrum's Wycliffe Partnership Team, or, Bob and Marla's Wycliffe Partnership Team. So you can name it whatever you want. But again, this is something that people might see if you use subscribe forms. So be mindful of what you decide to name it. If you want, there's some settings in here for your list. And so if you want to enable double opt-ins, again, this is really only going to be useful to you if you have people using subscribe forms, and it's completely up to you. So I don't use enable double opt-ins. But you're free to do that if you think it's important. So what it does is if somebody uses a subscribe form to sign up for your newsletter, they're going to get an email basically saying, are you sure? And they have to click on that email before they start receiving updates. If you don't click this, then when they use your subscribe form to sign up, they just start receiving them without that extra email. So it's whether or not you find that email to be important. Enabling the GDPR fields. This is important if you're if you need to be have Europe compliant regulate. If you need to meet the European compliance regulations, if that's important to you, then this is something that you're going to click. I'm not going to go over those issues in today's webinar. Mailchimp has a lot of helps for those things. Or if you need help, reach out and we'll connect you to somebody who can help you make sure all those things are taken care of. The enable reCAPTCHA, this again is going to be for your subscribe forms. And so you see this on different people's sign up things where they ask you to make changes or to verify information and things like that. I saw that somebody raised their hand. Again, we can't give you audio permissions during this webinar, but if you want to go ahead and type your question or comment into the chat box, Michelle will either answer it in the chat or she'll read the question to me so that I can answer it for you. Okay, scrolling down, you'll see some campaign defaults. So this is your from name. This is something that you'll see in each campaign that you send out. It's going to ask you who it's from. So if you're a married couple, maybe you want to put both of your first names here. I would put Jen and not my first, not Jennifer. You can always change this. Every campaign, they're going to ask you this. If you just want the default, then you don't have to change it. If you do need to change it, then you just go in, and I'll show you that next week. Same thing with a default email address. Default email subject, I don't recommend doing this because you're probably going to change your email subject each time you send a newsletter out. And then you have 3 options over here that we're going to come back to in a couple of weeks and talk more about. We're not going to talk about this today. So new subscriber notifications. If you want to receive an email that lets you know when somebody has subscribed to your newsletter, this is a place where you'd set that up. So if you do it one by one, we've never had you actually have to type in your email address before. But if you want to receive these, you're either going to do one by one or summary. You probably don't want both. This one, the one by one, means you'll receive an individual email for every single person who signs up. So if you use a subscribe form and you send it out to 20 people and 15 of them sign up, if you use this option, you'll receive 15 separate emails letting you know that people subscribed. If you do the same thing and use this one, you'll receive 1 email at the end of the day letting you know that 15 people signed up. Okay. So this is all personal preference, and you don't have to receive any notification at all if you don't want. But if you're going to be using subscribe forms, I would recommend setting it up so you do know when people add themselves. And then click Save Audience and Campaign Defaults. Okay, and so now all of your settings are ready for your audience. Okay, so once you have your audience set up, now you're able to start importing your contacts into the audience. There's a few different ways that you can do that. We're going to cover 4 different ways for this webinar. Okay, I know it sounds like a lot, but some of them won't take very much time. The first is you can go here where it just says Add Contacts, and you can click Add a Subscriber. This is going to let you add 1 contact at a time. Okay, so if somebody after church, or you went out to a meal with somebody, and 1 or 2 people said they want it to be added to your list, doing it 1 at a time is probably appropriate. Okay, but if you're adding 300 people at one time or 20 people at one time, it's probably easier to do an Excel sheet, which I'll talk about in a minute. Okay, but if you're doing it 1 at a time, you'll see this red asterisk. This is the required information. So the email address is the only thing that's required. I recommend people trying to get the first and last name, though, just so you know who's on your list. You see there's quite a bit of information that you can put into Mailchimp. this probably isn't very relevant for us. And we're going to talk about tags a little while later. But you do need to check this box here. So if this person gave me permission to email them, if you don't check that, you won't be able to add the person to your list. And then if this person is already on my list, update their profile. So if this is the way they're choosing to update contact information for somebody who's already on your list, you would want to check that box. So that's how you add one at a time. So there's 3 other ways that we're going to look at. 2 of them are called Donor Manager and TNT Connect. If you've not heard of those programs before, the reason that I'm emphasizing those 2 programs is that those are 2 programs for managing your donor information that we recommend all of our members use. Now you're going to pick one or the other, and it doesn't matter which one you pick. Okay, if you're not already using one, either one is fine. But they help you keep track of your partner's giving, of the way you interact with your partners, your contact information, all that kind of stuff is available in these programs. So that's why we're going to take a look at those 2 real quick. So let me do a new share. So the first one is Donor Manager. Do let us know if you can't see my Donor Manager. To export your contact data out of Donor Manager, you're going to go up to Email. Okay, so go to Email. And then here you see it says create a CSV email merge source file. You'll see Mailchimp is right in the description. Okay, so do that, do your settings, and then click this button. So do all this first before you export. Once you've exported your names, it's going to export it into an Excel sheet. And that Excel sheet is going to have to be edited some before you're able to use it. So that is frustrating for some people. But what Donor Manager does is when it exports, is it puts the first name and last name into the same cell, and that's not going to work for Mailchimp. You have to separate the first and last names into their own columns. If you have spouses who use the same email address, then you would put both spouse first names into the same first name column, last name's email address. If you have more than one email address for one person, you cannot have both email addresses in the same row. Okay, so each email address has to have its own entry. Otherwise, it will not import properly into Mailchimp. And so those are some of the things to think about if you're using Donor Manager. If you're using TNT, let me get switched over there. Wait, let me know if you don't see TNT. You should see my TNT screen right now. If you're using TNT, TNT is a lot nicer for this process than Donor Manager when it comes to syncing with Mailchimp. TNT actually has a sync tool. And so if you have TNT, you'd go up to your tools, go down to sync with Mailchimp. Okay, and then you need to select which list that you want to sync with. To do that, you have to enter your Mailchimp API key. To find your API key, just click on this blue link right here. Okay, and that's going to take me over to my Mailchimp account, and it's going to take me directly to my API key. Okay, so if you go ahead and copy your key, and then go back to TNT, you're just going to paste the key in, and then click Next. Okay, and then you'll see the list or the audience that you've put into Mailchimp. So choose your audience, and this is why you have to create that audience first. If you don't have that audience created, then there's nothing to import into. So choose your audience, and then click Next. You can choose that to include some of this other information if you like. It's not necessary. You have to keep the email, first and last names, but the rest of it is optional. And click OK. And now the list is ready to sync. So I'm going to choose Sync. Of course, that process is going to take a lot longer if you have something like 300 people in your TNT database. Okay, so be ready for it to take some time if you have a lot of people. Now it's telling me these are the contacts that are only in TNT and they're not in Mailchimp yet. So I want to add all of them, so I'm going to say check all. But you can choose to uncheck some of them if you don't want everybody over there. Okay, so only check the people that you want to go to Mailchimp, and then say add a Mailchimp. Again, this is going to take longer for people who have a lot of information to switch over. Once you've done that, click Next. And this is telling you I have this contact only in Mailchimp and not in my TNT database. If I want to move it back to TNT, I would have to click this and say either delete from Mailchimp or import into TNT. Okay, I don't want to do either of those, so I'm going to leave it unchecked and then click skip. Okay, so these fields in Mailchimp are not managed by TNT Connect. Right click to delete. Okay, so if I right click that and click delete field from Mailchimp list, and then say OK. All right, and that's it. So once I go back over to Mailchimp, do me share. Okay. So once we go back over to Mailchimp, let me know if you can't see my Mailchimp. So you should see my Mailchimp account now. Okay, I'm going to go to Manage Contacts. Okay, so now if I go to View Contacts, you'll see there are all my TNT contacts. Okay, it automatically moved everybody over. If you don't have Donor Manager or TNT, you're going to want to set up an Excel sheet. Okay, and we're going to give you this information in the FAQs. So when you're setting up your Excel sheet, you need to have 3 columns. You need to have an email column, a last name column, and a first name column. So again, with Donor Manager especially, you're going to want to make sure these match up. Once you have these 3 columns, you're going to be able to import them into Mailchimp. Okay, so to do that, we go to Add Contacts and then Import Contacts. Okay. You can either save your Excel sheet as a CSV document and click Continue to Set Up, and it'll give you the opportunity to upload that. Make sure to notice that you cannot save it as an Excel sheet. If you save it as an Excel sheet, it's not going to work with Mailchimp. It has to be CSV. Or you can hit Copy Paste from File, which is what I'm going to show you, and then click Continue to Set Up. I'm going to emphasize this a little bit. Notice that the Continue buttons are always in the bottom right-hand corner, far bottom right-hand corner. Lots of people have gotten frustrated in the past because they think it's going to be here at the bottom somewhere, and they're just looking in the wrong place. So remember, if you get frustrated, you can't figure out how to get to the next screen, but that button's probably in the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, so we're going to go back to the Excel sheet, and I'm just going to copy the information. Okay, so I highlighted my information, and I'm copying it. And notice I did not include this top row. So you don't want to include the row labels. You just want to include the contact information. And then go back to your import and click paste. Okay, and you'll see it pasted all of my partner's information in there. And then you want to click this box. I understand that my billing plan may be automatically upgraded. It's safe for you to click that because they don't have any of your billing information. Okay, so this is really set up for people who are using over 2,000 contacts and they're being charged for how many contacts they have in their list. Ours is free, so this won't cause any problems for you. Once you check the box, click Continue to Match. Okay, and you'll see it says, it's telling you there's 2 unmatched columns, and so we have to tell them which column is which. So they already knew which field was the email field, and you'll see that right here, which is email address, but here it's unmatched. So we need to edit this, and this is my last name, so I'm going to tell it its last name and click Save. And then the next field is my first names, so I'm going to go down to first name and click Save. And so it doesn't matter which order you have these in. If these 2 fields are flipped, it's fine. Just make sure you give them the proper label. Once they all have the proper label, you can click Continue to Organize. Okay, we're not going to add tags here. I'm going to show you how to use those in just a moment. We want them to stay subscribed, so don't change this. And then go ahead and click Continue to Review. Okay, so it's just telling me what import method I'm using, how many columns I'm importing, and then the status of the contacts I'm importing. So just click Import. Okay. It's telling me that there's 10 contacts that were added, and 2 of those emails were either invalid or role-based. If you have emails that are invalid or role-based, a couple of things could have happened. One is that you had a character in your email address that shouldn't have been there. So if you had 2 emails in one cell and you deleted one and moved it out, you maybe left the semicolon in there. You need to go back and get rid of that semicolon. you could have accidentally added a space to somebody's username or password, or not password, to somebody's username or email. If you added a space to the email, it's going to think it's invalid. If you forgot the @ sign, it's going to think it's invalid. Role-based is if you have an email that's like admin@crosspointchurch.com or something along our info@something.com. Those email addresses might not be able to be added to Mailchimp. If one of the churches that you email to has one of those email addresses, what we encourage you to do is once you've created your email, it's going to have this link that says view this email in your browser. When you click on that, you get this URL up here. Okay, so if you use this URL, you could use that to send it to people who have role-based emails. Or we're going to teach you how to forward emails later. Not in this one or the next one, but in the tips or tricks email, we're going to show you how to do forward. So there's some ways to get around that. But just know that's why those aren't being added to your list. If you don't know why there's email addresses that weren't added, send me an email and I'll try to look at it with you to see if we can figure out what the problem is. Okay. So those are the variety of ways that you can get contacts in. So this is now my TNT folks plus the people from my Excel sheet. Okay. We changed a lot of stuff, so some of this isn't relevant anymore. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is how to do groups, or how to group your contacts, which Mailchimp now calls tags. So the reason that you would want to do this is I have all my contacts in here, but now I only want to send an email to my prayer partners, or I only want to send an email to my partners who are in St. Louis because I'm getting ready to go on a PD trip. However, whatever group that you might want to break this down into, instead of creating a separate audience, we're just going to give them something called a tag. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is check all the partners that you want to tag or add to that group. So I'm going to click all the partners that are in St. Louis, and I want to put in my St. Louis group. So you just go through and check the contacts that are relevant, and then you go to add or remove tags. Once you click on this menu, it's going to ask for the name of the tag. So I'm going to put St. Louis in here. So again, you could put prayer partners, financial partners, your advisory prayer team, East Coast, West Coast, whatever is going to be relevant to you as far as breaking up, adding groups to your newsletters or to your lists. So once you have that, go ahead and hit the Enter key on your keyboard. And now you'll see that there's this new column that shows up in your audience. They're called tags. You can add as many tags as you want, and it won't mess with your contacts. If you send to more than one tag at a time, that person still will only receive one of your emails. That person wouldn't receive them twice. To use your tags, we're going to talk about this a lot more next week. But to use your tags, it's going to be when you send a campaign. I'm going to do this real quick. Then we're going to go into more detail about this next week. So that's why I'm doing it so fast, but I just want to show you real quick. When you're sending your campaign, you're going to go to this to, and this is where you're going to choose the audience you want to send to. Once you've chosen your audience, it gives you the second option, segment or tag. If you just send it to an audience, you don't want to send it to your entire audience, you wouldn't do anything else to this. You would just go ahead and say click save. But if you want to send it to a tag or a group, you would use this. And you'll see this is where your list of tags is going to show up. If I click St. Louis and say save, you'll see it's only sending it to the 6 people that I chose for that St. Louis group. Okay, so that's how you kind of set that up. Are there any questions before we go forward? We have a couple more things to talk about still. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about is publicity settings. And so your publicity settings by default, each of your audiences are set to public. And so what that means is that your newsletter is findable by other people that are not part of your subscribe list. So people who are not subscribed to your audience can still, if I say list, I mean audience. It's going to take me a while to get used to the new vocabulary. But if you want people outside of your audience to be able to see your newsletters, you're going to have your publicity settings turned to public. If you don't want people outside of that audience to see your newsletter, then you can set it to private. To to do that, you're going to go to your audience page. So I went to audience at the top, and then over at the right it says manage audience, and then you'd go down to settings. Okay, so manage audience settings, and then you're going to scroll down to publicity settings. Okay, so you'll see your options here. So if you don't want it to be public, you'd click no to turn that off. I leave mine on yes because I don't mind other people outside my audience seeing it. And that's really all there is to the publicity settings. Again, if you have more security concerns, remember to go to the FAQ that I'll send later today, and that'll give you a lot more information about security. The biggest thing is to talk to your entity. If you're in a secure location, talk to your entity about their Mailchimp policy, because they probably have one, or they'll have advice or what they think about using this program. Okay, so do check with your entity. Whatever your entity says trumps anything that I say or the FAQ says. Okay, so always rely on your entity for keeping your email secure if that's important to your location. All right. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the archive bar. So the archive bar is this bar at the top of my newsletter. So where it says subscribe, past issues. Again, when somebody receives your email in their email inbox, this link is always going to be there. You don't want to delete this. If they click on it, it'll open it up in a web browser like I'm looking at now, and you'll see these options. It's past issues and subscribe. The archive is referring to this past issues button. If somebody clicks on that, it's going to show them a list of your previous newsletters. Okay, now this isn't all of the newsletters I've ever sent out. This is only going back to 2018. Okay, I've had this since 2016. But it does give them a list of a lot of the different messages that you sent out. Okay, so if you want people to be able to view this, then you want your archives turned on. If you don't want people to be able to see it, then you want to turn it off. All right, and that's the only thing. Okay, and it shows you a list of other things that people, that archive bar allows to happen. Okay, so look at those options and see if it's appropriate for you and whether or not you want it off and on. Once you've made your choices, click Save Publicity Settings. Okay, and then the last thing that we're going to talk about is authenticating your account. Okay, now, authenticating and verifying your account is critical if you have a Wycliffe.org email. Wycliffe USA just recently changed the regulations so that if you do not authenticate your email, it will not be received by people with Wycliffe and SIL email addresses. Okay, so make sure you turn that authentication on. And that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so to do that, you want to go to where your name is, and that'll drop down a menu. And then you want to go to account. There's a menu account. Then you want to go to settings and domains. Okay, settings, domains. The verification has probably already happened. Okay, so you see this little verified bubble, but that you already have that verified. It's because when I received that email at the beginning of today's webinar, and the one that you weren't able to see, right? But I kind of described, you receive an email, it has a button for you to click on to say, yes, this is my email. Yes, I did sign up this account. That's verifying your email address. So you shouldn't have to do this as a separate step. Authenticating is a separate step. Okay, so you want to click Authenticate. You don't have to do anything to this screen. Okay, this was Wycliffe's responsibility to set this up. I've already done so. So the only thing that you need to do is click Authenticate Domain. Okay, so once you've done that, you'll see it says Authenticated. And that's all that you need to do. You're done. Okay, Authenticating does several things. One is it's necessary now for Wycliffe.org. You have to do it. But even if you're not, so SIL is also set up for you to be able to authenticate. The positive thing about authenticating is that it makes it even less likely that it's going to be sent to a spam account. Okay, so it's just another way that Mailchimp is helping email clients know that this is an authentic, real email. It's not a spam email or spam message. So it's really there for your benefit. But that's all there is to authenticating. So, and that's all the information that we had planned to cover for today. So we went over how to sign up for your account, how to create and edit your audience, how to import your contacts into those audiences, how to use tags, and then we covered publicity and authentication. Next week, our webinar is called Mailchimp Campaigns, and again, you can register for that on this website. Okay, all the registration links for all the webinars are right here. And it'll be on May 8th. We're going to cover how to set up a template, how to use a template, and then how to use that template to create your updates, or what Mailchimp calls a campaign, and then how to send out and schedule those campaigns. That's where we're going next week. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask now. I'll stay around for another 10 to 15 minutes if you have questions. If you have questions that aren't covered during this time, later you're trying to set up your account and you get stuck, feel free to reach out. You can email us at the PD Webinars USA email address, and you can set up a time to meet with me. You can either email your question, or we can set up a time to do a one-on-one video chat, and I'm happy to help you in that way as my schedule allows. And so, yeah, so that's all we have today. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Thank you, Mary.
Jen, did you mention the survey?
I didn't. Michelle has put, yes, thank you. Michelle has put a survey for you into the chat window. It's a link just to click on. There's just, I think, like 5 or 6 questions. We really value your feedback, so if you take a few minutes, go ahead and fill that out. I appreciate that. And it'll also be in your follow-up email. I'm going to stop the recording here.